The energy inside Madison Square Garden was unlike anything wrestling fans had seen in years. The chants echoed through the rafters, "Hogan! Hogan! Hogan," as one of the most legendary figures in WWE history prepared to lace up his boots for one final time. Hulk Hogan, the immortal icon who defined a generation of sports entertainment, wasn't leaving the spotlight through tragedy. No, he was walking out on his own terms, one last match, one final farewell. On the evening of July 24, 2025, WWE hosted Legends Never Die, Hogan's Final Bell, a spectacular tribute show honoring Hogan's incredible legacy. The night wasn't about titles or rivalries, it was about respect, nostalgia, and closure. With a crowd filled with fans, celebrities, and past WWE superstars, the atmosphere was both electric and emotional. As of now, Hulk Hogan's funeral plans have not been made known to the public, but we have something juicy you need to know about Hulk Hogan's death. In a surprise twist, Hogan's opponent was none other than John Cena, a modern-day legend and lifelong fan of the Hulkster. The match was more than a bout, it was a symbolic passing of the torch. Cena, decked out in his red, white, and blue gear as a nod to Hogan's classic colors, entered the ring with visible emotion. Hogan followed shortly after, draped in the iconic yellow feather boa, ripping his shirt to a thunderous ovation. Before the bell rang, the lights dimmed and a heartfelt video package aired, showcasing Hogan's rise from Venice Beach, California, to worldwide stardom. Clips of his legendary matches against Andre the Giant, The Ultimate Warrior, and Randy Savage played on the screen, bringing tears to fans who grew up with him. Peers like Ric Flair, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Rock gave personal messages on what Hogan meant to the industry. As the match unfolded, it was clear the story wasn't about athleticism, it was about heart. Every punch, every body slam, carried the weight of history. At one point, Hogan paused mid-ring and gave his signature air cup to the crowd in all four corners, soaking in the love. One last time. Cena would eventually pick up the win with an emotional hug and not a finishing move. Hogan then took the mic and addressed the fans, "Let me tell you something, brother. I've done it all. And now, I leave this ring with no regrets. I love you all. And the question is, what you gonna do when Hulkamania lives forever in your hearts?" The night closed with confetti raining down, the crowd singing Real American, and Hogan standing tall, tears in his eyes, with one arm raised high. This was no goodbye. This was a celebration, a living legend honored while still among us. As of July 26, fans around the world continue to relive the magic through replays, tribute posts, and personal stories of how Hogan inspired them. The WWE has announced plans to erect a statue in his honor at WrestleMania 41, forever preserving his place in the pantheon of greatness. Hulk Hogan didn't pass away. He passed the torch. On the evening of July 24, 2025, the wrestling world didn't mourn. It celebrated, because this wasn't the end of a life, this was the final chapter of a legendary career. For over 4 decades, Hulk Hogan stood as the face of professional wrestling. He body-slammed giants. He inspired generations. He turned Hulkamania into a global phenomenon. But tonight, he wasn't in the ring to fight, he was in the ring to say goodbye. WWE billed the event as Legends Never Die, Hogan's Final Bell, a historic one-night-only spectacle live from Madison Square Garden. It wasn't just a match. It was a farewell celebration. A once-in-a-lifetime moment where nostalgia met respect, and time stood still. The crowd sold out in under 5 minutes. Fans flew in from across the globe. Tokyo, London, Toronto, and even small-town Florida, just to witness the moment Hulk Hogan walked down the ramp one last time. From the very start of the night, it was clear this wasn't going to be a normal WWE show. Backstage, current and former superstars filled the halls like a class reunion. Randy Orton, Rey Mysterio, Edge, Becky Lynch, Bianca Belair, and even Triple H all came out to pay their respects. The Rock, who was filming in Hollywood, flew in on a red-eye flight and arrived minutes before the show began. Stone Cold Steve Austin brought out a cold one just for Hogan, and yes, even Vince McMahon himself made a rare public appearance, not as the chairman, but as the man who once helped build Hulkamania from the ground up. There would be no WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan. Period. He didn't just carry the company, he was the company. Tonight, we give him the send-off he's earned. The tribute video hits hard, grainy footage of the early 80s. Hogan vs. Iron Sheik. Hogan vs. Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3. The slam heard round the world, the roaring crowds, the epic entrances, clips flash across the screen, every catchphrase, every flex, every pose. Whatcha gonna do, brother? Train, say your prayers, eat your vitamins. The entire garden sang along like it was church, and then, silence. A single spotlight hit the entrance ramp, and there he was. No pyro. No fanfare. Just Hogan, walking slowly down the ramp, soaking it all in. The chants begin again. Thank you, Hogan. Thank you, Hogan. He points to the crowd. He cups his hand to his ear, and then, the shirt comes off, just like old times, but this time, it's different. This isn't 1985. This isn't about glory, this is about legacy, and out comes his opponent. John Cena, decked in red, white, and blue. Head bowed. His eyes filled with respect. Cena doesn't do his usual salute. He walks straight to Hogan and extends his hand. You're the reason I became a wrestler. I just want to say, thank you. Tonight's not about wins or losses. It's about respect. And giving the man who started it all the final match he deserves. The bell rings, and the crowd holds its breath. The bell rang, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Hogan and Cena stood face to face, the energy inside Madison Square Garden pulsing like electricity. Hogan, aged but still fierce, extended his arms wide, daring Cena to lock up. The two collided in the center of the ring, the crowd erupting with every move, not because of the technicality, but because of the story. Every lockup, every shoulder tackle, every classic Hogan pose brought fans to their feet. Cena played his part to perfection. He moved at half pace, giving Hogan space to shine, knowing full well that this wasn't a fight, it was a tribute. Hogan hit the ropes, dropped a leg, and the building nearly exploded. It wasn't the most graceful leg drop, but it didn't matter. The legend had done it one last time. Midway through the match, the crowd began chanting, "This is awesome," and the cameras panned to tearful fans who grew up idolizing Hogan. The emotion inside the building was contagious. Cena took a moment mid-match to raise Hogan's arm to the sky, giving him the ovation he deserved. The referee paused the count intentionally, allowing Hogan to pose, point, and cup his ear in all four corners. And then, in a breathtaking surprise, the lights dimmed and Real American began to play again, but this time, it wasn't for Hogan. It was for his guests. From the entrance ramp, several legends began to walk out, lining the stage with reverence. Ric Flair in a sparkling robe, Shawn Michaels with a hand over his heart, Stone Cold Steve Austin with a single beer in the air, and Bret Hart with his classic pink sunglasses all stood to honor the man they once shared the ring with. Behind them, the next generation, Seth Rollins, Cody Rhodes, Bianca Belair, Roman Reigns, stood in unified silence. For one night only, it wasn't about brands or rivalries or titles. It was about the man in the ring who made it all possible. As the match neared its end, Hogan locked up with Cena one final time. Cena whispered something in his ear, and then dropped to one knee. Hogan didn't go for a pin. Instead, he pulled Cena to his feet and embraced him in the center of the ring. The bell rang not with a 3 count, but with a timekeeper's final salute. The referee raised both men's arms, but Hogan gently lowered Cena's and lifted his own. It was his moment. The arena went dark, and a single spotlight followed Hogan as he grabbed a microphone. With his signature raspy voice shaking slightly, Hogan began to speak. "Let me tell you something, brother," he said, and the crowd popped one last time. He smiled through tears. "I've slammed giants, I've walked through fire, and I've bled in this ring for over 40 years. But tonight, I don't walk out as a champion. I walk out as a grateful man." He paused, surveying the faces in the crowd, some crying, some cheering, all locked into the moment. "This business, this ring, you fans, you made Hulkamania run wild. You believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. And now, I walk away not as a wrestler, but as a brother to each and every one of you." He turned to Cena. Thank you, John. You carried the flag when I couldn't anymore. And to the boys and girls in the back, you don't need to be the biggest, the strongest, or the fastest. You just gotta believe. And always remember, the power lies in the Hulkamaniacs. With that, he raised one final arm in the air, his theme song blaring as the crowd stood in ovation. Confetti rained from the ceiling, golden and red, a visual echo of the 80s when Hulkamania was born. Backstage, WWE's production team had been preparing one last surprise. As Hogan walked up the ramp, his family was waiting at the top, his children, his wife, even a few of his old trainers and mentors. As he embraced them, the Titantron played a never-before-seen montage of unreleased backstage clips, Hogan helping young wrestlers, laughing with crew members, shaking hands with fans behind the curtain. The audience watched in silent awe, seeing not just the icon, but the man. The man who gave everything to wrestling. Triple H came out next, shaking Hogan's hand and lifting it high. He then motioned toward a velvet curtain placed beside the entrance ramp. With a dramatic pull, the curtain dropped to reveal a life-sized bronze statue of Hulk Hogan, ripped shirt, flexed arms, and all, etched with the words, "Immortal. Eternal. Hulkamania lives forever." The crowd once again roared as Hogan stood beside the statue, clearly moved, mouthing the words "thank you" over and over again to the audience. As the show came to a close, The Undertaker made a rare, out-of-character appearance. No trench coat, no hat, just Mark Calloway, walking down the ramp in jeans and a black t-shirt. He entered the ring, looked at Hogan, and said softly into the mic, "There's only one immortal. And tonight, he gets the send-off he deserves. Rest easy, brother, not in peace, but in legacy." Then, in a move that stunned everyone, Undertaker stepped aside, knelt to one knee, and pointed to Hogan's boots, in a gesture that sent chills down every spine in the building. Hogan slowly untied his iconic yellow boots, placed them in the center of the ring, and kissed the mat. It was the last act of a man who had done everything there was to do in the industry. He stood up, raised one last arm, and pointed to the sky. To the fans, to the wrestlers, to everyone who ever believed, "What ya gonna do when Hulkamania rides off one last time?" And just like that, he was gone. He disappeared through the curtain, not with fireworks, not with music, but with the raw, deafening roar of a crowd that knew it had witnessed history. In the days that followed, WWE announced that Hogan's statue would be permanently installed at the WrestleMania 41 fan experience in Tampa, Florida, Hogan's home state. Fans from around the world began sharing stories on social media, old photos, signed posters, memories of watching Hogan body slam Andre the Giant on their dad's VHS tape. Hashtags like #ThankYouHogan and #FinalBell for Hogan trended worldwide. Even ESPN, CNN, and BBC covered the retirement match, calling it one of the greatest farewell moments in sports entertainment history. But it wasn't about coverage or headlines. It was about closure. Hulk Hogan got to say goodbye while the world was watching, on his terms, in front of the fans who made him a legend. He didn't fade away. He didn't vanish. He stood tall, smiled wide, and exited the only way Hulk Hogan could, immortal. Backstage after the event, the air was heavy with gratitude and reverence. No one was rushing to take off their boots or catch a flight. The locker room, usually filled with banter and background noise, had grown respectfully quiet. Hogan entered slowly, still wiping sweat and tears from his brow. The moment his boots hit the floor, the entire locker room stood up in unison and applauded. From top champions to ring crew, from rookies to Hall of Famers, everyone clapped, not out of obligation, but out of heartfelt admiration. Becky Lynch was the first to walk up to him. She didn't say much. She just gave Hogan a hug and whispered, "Thank you for opening the door." Behind her, Cody Rhodes followed with a handshake and a look that said more than words could. "My father always said you were the benchmark," he said softly, referring to the late Dusty Rhodes. "And tonight, you said it one last time." Roman Reigns approached next, flanked by Paul Heyman. For a man who rarely breaks character, Reigns removed his head of the table demeanor and offered Hogan a nod of deep respect. Acknowledge this, he said, placing his hand on Hogan's shoulder before stepping back in a private lounge set up by WWE. A post-show reception buzzed with both nostalgia and reflection. A small bar was serving Hogan's favorite drink, simple rum and cola. Monitors played classic Hogan promos on a loop. One screen showed his legendary face-off with The Rock at WrestleMania X8, another played his iconic heel turn to form the NWO, and yet another showed young Hogan winning his first WWE Championship from the Iron Sheik in 1984. These weren't just highlights. They were time capsules of wrestling's golden age. As the night went on, old stories filled the air. Remember when he almost didn't slam Andre? Jim Ross said, shaking his head with a chuckle. I was calling that match thinking his back would give out. Undertaker, sitting nearby, nodded solemnly. He didn't break. Not then, not ever. Hulk was built different. Shawn Michaels added, the thing people forget? He knew how to make a moment. He was the moment. Even the younger generation joined the huddle. Logan Paul, visibly humbled, approached Hogan and asked to take a picture, not for social media, but for himself. Man, I talk a lot, Logan admitted, but you're the real deal. You did this before any of us knew how to even hold a mic. Hogan laughed, gave him a brotherly arm shake, and replied, just keep the passion alive. That's what it's about. The backstage cameras captured a beautiful moment as well. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, two men known for their anti-establishment personas, standing at the side of the ring earlier that night, quietly watching from the curtain. Neither of them was booked for the segment, but both had stayed back, emotionally invested. We're all part of this crazy universe because of what he started, Sami said, his eyes fixed on the monitor. We wouldn't be here otherwise. Back in the ring, after the show officially ended, WWE gave Hogan one more gift. As fans began filing out of the arena, a final curtain call was held. Triple H brought Hogan back out under the house lights, this time in jeans and a t-shirt reading Immortal. Triple H grabbed the mic and, with a crack in his voice, said, we throw the word legend around a lot. But this guy? He defined the word. Hulk Hogan didn't just headline WrestleMania, he built WrestleMania. Then, without warning, a familiar guitar riff blared through the speakers, Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix. The crowd lost it. In what could only be described as a full-circle moment, Hogan did one last slow strut, air guitaring to his own theme while fans cheered and whistled. He high-fived ringside fans, kissed a crying baby someone handed to him, and then stopped at the commentary table where Michael Cole and Corey Graves stood applauding. Corey Graves, usually snarky and composed, had tears in his eyes. He was our superhero, he said into his mic, our very own comic book come to life. Meanwhile, the media had already begun its coverage blitz. ESPN cut in with breaking news. Hulk Hogan officially retires an emotional farewell match, the ticker read. CNN followed suit. So did Sports Illustrated. TMZ uploaded behind-the-scenes photos of Hogan backstage with legends and current stars. Even Rolling Stone and Billboard posted tribute articles, not just for the man, but for the cultural phenomenon he represented. News anchors who never mentioned wrestling in years were suddenly talking about Hulk Hogan. The next morning, WWE uploaded the full tribute match to their YouTube channel with the title, Hulk Hogan's Final Match, Full Farewell Show. Within hours, it hit 5 million views. Fans flooded the comments with stories. One man wrote, I used to watch Hogan with my dad. He passed last year. Watching this felt like saying goodbye to them both. Another posted, I was 9 years old when I saw Hulk slam Andre. I'm 48 now. Cried like a baby tonight. WWE wasn't done either. In the weeks that followed, they announced a limited edition line of Hogan farewell merchandise, shirts, posters, replica bandanas, even signed yellow boots. All proceeds, per Hogan's request, would go to a foundation for retired wrestlers in need. Hogan had long been vocal about supporting the men and women who built the business behind the curtain and away from the spotlight. Now, even in retirement, he was giving back. In a special episode of WWE's documentary series WWE 24, titled Hogan, The Final Bell, fans were given a behind-the-scenes look at the making of the farewell. From production meetings to rehearsals, to Hogan's quiet moment alone in the ring hours before the event, the documentary painted a full picture. One especially moving scene showed Hogan in an empty MSG, sitting on the turnbuckle with his hands clasped, whispering to himself. The mic barely picked it up, but what he said was clear: "God, thank you for letting me do this one more time." The documentary ended with Hogan sitting in a small dressing room, looking into the camera. "I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. But I always tried to give the fans everything I had. And tonight? Tonight was everything I dreamed it would be." He paused, then added with a grin, "Now I can ride off into the sunset, and maybe finally rest these old bones." And just like that, a legend stepped off the stage, not in tragedy, not in scandal, not in silence, but in celebration. Hulk Hogan's farewell wasn't just a goodbye. It was a statement. A reminder of an era. A thank you from a man who changed everything. As the days passed, the statue at WrestleMania Fan Access was unveiled officially. Fans lined up for hours to take pictures with it. Beside it, WWE installed a touchscreen where people could watch Hogan's greatest promos, matches, and interviews. Fans left flowers. Some knelt beside the bronze boots and prayed. Parents lifted their kids onto their shoulders to show them the man who built the very stage their new favorites now performed on. Even months later, you'd hear it echo in arenas around the world. A chant, unprovoked, during a random Monday Night Raw or a SmackDown taping. A chant from the balcony or the front row: "Hogan! Hogan! Hogan!" Because in a business built on characters, personas, and over-the-top gimmicks, there are few who transcend it. Hulk Hogan was one of them. He wasn't just a wrestler. He was the wrestler. The blueprint. The icon. The immortal. And now, after decades of body slams and red and yellow sweat, Hulk Hogan was finally home. And as the dust finally settled, and the chants of "thank you, Hogan" faded into the history books, the world of wrestling paused. It's rare in WWE, where time moves fast, and the next headline is always one moment away, for the entire industry to slow down and appreciate a single man. But Hulk Hogan wasn't just any man. He was the bridge between eras. The titan who brought pro wrestling from smoky arenas to primetime television. The symbol of Americana in tights and boots. In the days that followed, fans shared their most treasured Hogan memories across social media. Clips of him ripping his shirt apart, dropping the big leg, or pointing his finger at the camera with wide eyes and unshakable confidence, those moments flooded timelines like a living time capsule. One particular clip resurfaced and went viral again, a young Hulk Hogan on The Tonight Show in 1985, telling Johnny Carson, "I just want to make people believe in heroes again." And maybe that was the real magic of Hulk Hogan, not just that he entertained, but that he inspired. That he gave kids someone to cheer for, adults someone to believe in, and everyone someone to remember. At WWE headquarters in Stamford, a plaque was quietly placed in the main hallway, right beside those of Andre the Giant, the Ultimate Warrior, and Bruno Sammartino. It read, "To Hulk Hogan, the immortal. The icon. The foundation. Thank you for believing in us, and for making us believe in you." Meanwhile, rumors began to swirl that WrestleMania 41 would feature an official Hall of Heroes segment, a live ceremony, separate from the Hall of Fame, where legends like Hogan would be honored not just for their achievements, but for their lasting impact on the soul of the business. Nothing had been confirmed, but after that farewell match, no one doubted it would happen. Hogan had done what so few in wrestling ever could. He left with his head high, his story complete, and his legend sealed not by gold, but by gratitude. In the closing moment of WWE's special tribute show, a single camera faded into a quiet beach in Clearwater, Florida. The sun was setting over the waves. A man in a bandana, sitting alone in a beach chair, stared out into the orange horizon. The camera moved closer, revealing it was Hogan. His mustache a little wider, his shoulders a little heavier, but the fire still in his eyes. He turned toward the lens and smiled. No words. Just a nod. A wave. And then, he looked back at the SEA. As the final tribute faded to black, fans thought the curtain had officially closed on Hulk Hogan's storied legacy. But as with everything in wrestling, the end is rarely ever truly the end. Because while Hogan had stepped away from the ring, he had never stepped away from the business. And in the weeks following that final farewell, his presence began to be felt in unexpected ways. Back at WWE headquarters in Stamford, a quiet buzz began building. Reports swirled that Hogan had been offered a behind-the-scenes executive role, a position not of power, but of mentorship. According to sources within WWE, Triple H had personally pitched the idea. Hogan would become the company's official legacy advisor, tasked with guiding the next generation of superstars through the stormy waters of fame, media, and public pressure. He wouldn't be scripting promos or writing angles. His job would be simpler, but more profound, to be a North Star inside the Performance Center in Orlando. His influence began to take root. Young talent who had grown up idolizing him now sat in seminar rooms listening to the Hulkster break down not wristlocks or body slams, but charisma, crowd psychology, and storytelling. He'd pace the ring as if he never left it, asking rookies, "What's your moment?" Not your move, your moment. What will the fans remember when the lights go out? Footage leaked of one such session, Hogan speaking to a group that included Braun Breaker, Carmelo Hayes, and even NXT Women's Champion Roxanne Perez. "Don't worry about being liked," Hogan said. "Worry about being unforgettable." The clip went viral. For every new wrestler chasing their first taste of stardom, the wisdom of someone who created stardom itself hit deep. Outside of WWE, tributes poured in from around the world. In Japan, New Japan Pro Wrestling hosted a special Hulk Hogan Appreciation Night in Tokyo Dome, complete with translated promos and a video message from Antonio Inoki's family, acknowledging the history the two men once made together. In Mexico, CMLL aired a retrospective showing Hogan's influence on Lucha Libre, drawing parallels between his rise and El Santo's own legendary run. Even AEW, in a rare moment of cross-promotional respect, aired a brief message from Chris Jericho: "You can't write wrestling history without Hulk Hogan. Period." Meanwhile, WWE leaned further into preserving Hogan's legacy. Peacock launched a multi-part documentary titled Immortal: The Rise and Rise of Hulk Hogan, directed by a former ESPN 30 for 30 filmmaker. The first episode premiered to rave reviews. Critics praised its honesty. It covered not just the glories but also the controversies, the setbacks, the mistakes, and the comeback. One particularly emotional section focused on Hogan's years away from the spotlight, battling health issues and personal doubts. But the emotional centerpiece was that final match at Madison Square Garden. The documentary didn't just show it, it deconstructed it. Every camera angle. Every face in the crowd. Every breath Hogan took as he stepped out one last time. Back at Hogan's Florida home, life had slowed down, but it hadn't stopped. He began spending more time with his family. His grandchildren, barely old enough to remember his wrestling days, now watched YouTube clips of him slamming giants and flexing in front of tens of thousands. "That's Papa Hulk," they'd say, laughing as he tried to keep up with them in the yard. For all the fame, all the glitz, this was the part of his life he cherished the most. But even in retirement, the fans never stopped reaching out. Letters came in by the hundreds. People thanked him not just for matches, but for memories. A nurse from Missouri who watched wrestling with her cancer-stricken father in the 90s. A soldier stationed in Kuwait who kept a Hogan figure in his duffel bag as a good luck charm. A schoolteacher who started a Hulkamania club in 1987 to inspire self-confidence in her students. These weren't fans. They were people whose lives had been shaped, in some small but meaningful way, by the man in red and yellow. One afternoon, Hogan made a quiet appearance at a Make-A-Wish event in Tampa. No camera.